Hello, 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 my friends, and welcome to another episode of Terror Radio Podcast. If this is your first time joining me, then welcome. This is a podcast dedicated in bringing you the best of horror and thriller, old-time radio broadcasts, as well as original stories. I'm your host, Keith, aka the Radio Show Nerd, and tonight's episode is entitled Villianous Voices. Now I tried to say that 4 times in a row. So, without further ado, this is Terror Radio. The 2 radio series highlighted tonight are Favorite Story. This is a gem I just discovered a few weeks ago, followed by Quiet Please. Now, Favorite Story was a nationally syndicated anthology show which ran from 1946 to 1949 and was hosted by actor Ronald Colman. The premise of the show was every episode featured an adaptation of a story selected by a celebrity, supposedly his or her favorite story, hence the title. Today's radio play is called The Glass Eye, and this was a story written by John Kerr, and this was first broadcasted on Favorite Story on January 1st, 1949. Following that is the radio play 3,000 Words, first broadcasted on Quiet Please, August 28th, 1948. Now, you all know the drill. Sit back, turn down the lights, and listen to The Glass Eye, followed by 3,000 Words.
This is Ronald Coleman, inviting you to radio's most dramatic half hour, Favorite Story. Favorite Story invites you to hear a story discovery. It was found on a London bookstall by Jerome Robbins, the young choreographer who did such brilliant work in the Broadway hits On the Town, High Button Shoes, and Look Ma, I'm Dancing. Robbins thought this yarn so unusual that he immediately sent us a copy and named it his favorite story. A half-dozen cables have sped back and forth across the Atlantic to obtain the rights to dramatize this strange tale. So, for all of you who like your narratives on the startling side, here's John Keir Cross's The Glass Eye. There are things that are funny so that you laugh at them. And there are things that are funny, but you don't laugh at them at all. You can take, for example, the case of Julia. Is it possible to laugh at people like Julia? I've never been able to. Yet Julia is funny. There's something funny in that gaunt shape, in those wide and earnest eyes, in the red, moist tip of that nose of hers that seems longer than any nose in the world. Julia is over 40, 42 to be exact. A friend of mine, a man who makes up verse for the magazines, wrote a poem about Julia. He called it To Julia, a song for a lost, mad girl. And it went like this. Oh, she thought she was in China and 1,000,000 miles away, all among the tall pagodas where the shining geishas play. And the mockingbirds were singing and the lanterns burning red, and the temple bells were ringing, softly, softly in her head. Now, Julia isn't really mad, just strange. You'd be strange, too, if you led the life Julia leads. I want you to hear a story about Julia. Since most of what happened is so terribly personal, let's climb the stairs to Julia's dusky little flat and sit down next to her, as if we weren't even there, and try to listen to what goes on inside her head.
It didn't happen. It never happened. I might have imagined it, you know. Yet this room is real enough. The yellow wallpaper stained with damp at the corners. The washstand. The gas ring a trifle rusty. The mantel shelf with the 8-day clock. And in front of it, on a square of velvet, the glass eye. His glass eye. As real as anything else in the room. No. I mustn't look at it. I mustn't keep it there as a terrible reminder. Why do I? Why? It's the only memory I have. The only memory. It started late one summer. It was warm in London. I was working for Mr. Mofrey, a solicitor. I remember turning on my stool and waiting until he had finished writing a sentence in a law piece. Mr. Mofrey.
Yes, Miss Benson?
Would you mind, Mr. Mofrey, if I left about 20 minutes early this afternoon?
Oh? What's the special occasion, Miss Benson?
I have to meet a train. My sister's boy is coming to spend a few days with me. They live in Lister.
Oh, yes, that's the crippled lad, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Mofrey. My sister likes to spend a bit of time visiting her husband's people in Wales. And so Bernard comes to London. I do my best to show the poor little chap a good time.
That's very generous of you, Miss Benson. What sort of things do you do to amuse the lad?
I take him to the cinema. I buy him a toy. He's a quiet child. He doesn't ask for much.
Hunsecker down the hall mentioned that there was a good bill at the Old Palace Music Hall. I imagine the lad would like that. Acrobats and such. There's also a ventriloquist. One of those chaps who throws his voice.
Oh, that's a fine suggestion, Mr. Mofrey. I'll get tickets for tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Mofrey. I met Bernard at his train. He was a very pale child, 11 years old. We had supper at the ABC tea shop. A mutton chop apiece and a large baked potato between us. It tasted good. Bernard said very little, but it was good to eat with someone else, with a guest. We went to the theater and sat in red plush stalls. There was an acrobat act, a man and a woman in white tights and spangled panties. I'm afraid I found it rather dull. Now, let me see, Bernard. What's next? Max Collodi, I guess you pronounce it. The gentleman ventriloquist with his amazing dummy, George. Oh, I think this will amuse you, Bennett. The curtain rose, and I saw him.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I and my talented little dummy here will be pleased to entertain you.
Watch out who you're calling a dummy, Max. You're not so smart yourself.
How about a song, George? A nice, smart song.
Don't mind if I do, Max, old man. Isn't he dull?
Go ahead, George.
Stop shoving me, Max. I'm going. There was I, a-waiting at the church, a-waiting at the church, a-waiting at the church. This here girl, she left.
As he sat there on the stage with the spotlight on him, I knew there was no one more handsome in the whole world than Max Collodi. His dark hair gleamed, his shoulders were so broad. George, the dummy on his knee, was a grotesque doll about 3 feet high. I hardly listened to their act. I just stared and stared at the incredibly handsome young man. And I knew then that there could be no other man in all the world for me but the ventriloquist, Max Collodi. I took Bernard home as if I were in a dream. I gave him a cup of hot milk and put him to bed in a cot behind a curtain. Then I went to bed at the far side of the room. I lay for a long time staring at the ceiling, listening to the night sounds. Footsteps through the window from the street. The slow footsteps of a policeman. The strolling footsteps of lovers. Lovers. Lovers.
Oh, come on. Come on now.
And all the time I kept thinking of Max Collodi. Mrs. Max Collodi. Madame Collodi. Or is it Senora Collodi? Oh, footsteps mounting the stairs. The young man in the flat about coming home. But suppose I was Senora Collodi. Right now, I'm lying in the upper room of our villa in Italy. Max has been appearing at the theater. He's coming home now, dead tired. It's his footsteps coming up the stairs. In another moment, the door will open. He'll come in. He'll lean down and kiss me. I'll hold him very close. It is the young man upstairs. He's going into his flat. Senora Collodi. After Bernard went back to Lister, I went to the music hall again. I prayed that Max Collodi would still be there. He was. He was. It was his last night. I sat so impatiently through the dreadful acrobat act. And then he came on. He came on. I didn't listen to his act at all. I just stared at him.
A ventriloquist all am I. A ventriloquist all, that's all.
And that's all you are, son.
Well, don't rub it in, man. Don't rub it in. A ventriloquist
I didn't care what George was. It was Max, his master, I cared about.
all, that's all.
What a nice small bow he made. Such gentlemanly restraint. Bowing without standing up with the dummy still on his knee. They were applauding him, my Max. It was impossible to believe that anybody could be so handsome. I had to see him again. I had to know where he was going from here. I bought a copy of Stage. Here it is. Finsbury next week, then Streatham, Bradford, Blackpool. Yes. Yes. I'm going to do it. Mr. Murphy,
Yes, Miss Benson.
I wish to give my notice.
Huh?
I'm leaving your service.
Leaving, Miss Benson? Whatever for? Aren't you happy here?
I must be frank with you, Mr. Murphy. I'm not. I'm leaving to go with the man I'm in love with. I said that so surely, so certainly, like a young girl. Oh, but I never would have said it if I knew then what I know now. As I sit here in the room with the yellow wallpaper, looking at that hideous thing on my mantelpiece, the glass eye.
We're ready for Act Two of this week's favorite story. Lurene Tuttle stars as Julia in John Keir Cross's remarkable tale called The Glass Eye. Julia sits in the half-light of her room, hardly daring to look at her mantelpiece. For there, on a square of black velvet, is the glass eye.
Why did I do it? Years of loneliness, solitary meals, an ugly room with yellow wallpaper. No one to love. And then suddenly, Max Collodi. I had a small capital simply invested. I'd accumulated it through many years of saving. I drew it all out. I would live on this and follow Max Collodi around the country. Just looking at him, sitting there so handsome in the spotlight on the stage. Just looking at him was enough. I went to every performance he gave for weeks, paying my 3 shillings 6, sitting in the darkness, looking at the light. But then I felt I had to meet him. Maybe, if I were bold enough, I would even go up to him and say, Mr. Collodi, I enjoy your performance very much. And perhaps even shake his hand quickly for just a moment. At Streatham, I got up enough courage and waited at the stage entrance in the shadows.
Good night,
You're on
Pop.
performance tonight. Watch those boobs out front on a winter chuckle.
Two little things here.
I watched them all go out. The acrobat, the fat lady who rode the bicycle in the closing act, the juggler with the funny ears. But no Max Collodi. I waited a long time. They started to turn out all the lights. The old man at the stage door started to lock up the theater. I walked up to him slowly.
Who's that?
I beg your pardon, sir. I'm sorry to bother you.
Yes. What do you want?
I know you'll think this is very odd. But can you tell me if Max Collodi has come out yet?
You're waiting for Max Collodi?
Yes.
Well, that's a good one. She's waiting for Max Collodi.
I knew I wasn't good enough for him. People would laugh. I was old, and he was young and handsome. But even so, I wrote Max Collodi a letter. I wrote it very carefully. I told him how much I enjoyed his performance and wondered if perhaps I might be privileged to meet him. Days later, I received a reply. I tore open the letter. My dear Miss Benson, I am grateful for your praise. I regret to say, however, that I never grant interviews. Cordially yours, Max Collodi. Oh. But I kept going to his performances, and I kept on writing to him. It surprised me very much that he went on replying. And as time passed, he seemed to grow warmer in his letters, even friendly. Once in Bradford, he asked me to send him a photograph. I found a blurred snapshot of myself. In it, I appeared on a lawn against a background of fuchsia and veronica bushes, very shy, with my head to one side. It was a very old snapshot, a daylight exposure print on matte paper. People had said in those days that it was a dead spit image of me. The bobbed hair caught up in a bandeau of Japanese silk. The frock was no waist that ended above the knee. The earrings of emerald-cut glass. But it was a picture of me at 23. I shouldn't have sent it. The whole thing wouldn't have happened if I hadn't sent that picture. It was at Blackpool that I finally met Max Collodi. I'd been suggesting again and again in my letters that someday we might meet. And finally, a letter came. A very special letter. I ripped it open. Dear Miss Benson, I believe that I might grant you a short interview, but we must make certain conditions. You are to stay only for 5 minutes this first time. Later on, perhaps, if you still wish to go on seeing me, we might arrange longer appointments. I wish to state at this time that I have an aversion in real life to strong light, being so much in my professional life under the glare of the lamps and the footlights. So my hotel room will be dimly lit. If you do not mind being received in a half-lit hotel bedroom by a strange man with no other chaperone beside my dummy, George. My. Then would you come to the Seabank Temperance Hotel, Mortimer Street, Blackpool, at 10 p.m. on Saturday evening next, after my show at the Winter Garden Theater. At that time, I will be happy to tell you something about myself, and to hear in return something about you. Oh, I'm going to meet him. I'm going to meet Max Collodi. All day that Saturday I spent in front of the mirror at the boarding house where I was staying. But powder and lip rouge, used discreetly, of course, could not make me look 23 again. All the makeup in the world couldn't keep me from looking 42. I spent hours of agony before I could make up my mind what to wear. In the end, I knew there was no hope of looking like the snapshot. And I blessed Max for suggesting that the room be dim and that the interview last only 5 minutes. At 10 minutes to 10, I was walking up and down in a dark place near his hotel, waiting. It was the longest 10 minutes I had ever spent in my life. I glanced at my watch. 2 minutes to 10. I pushed open the swinging door of the hotel and walked up to the reception desk.
Yes, lady?
Could you tell me the number of Mr. Max Collodi's room, please?
The number 7 on the first floor. Stairway to your left.
As I walked across the lobby, I felt his eyes on my back. I mounted the stairs, taking care not to trip over the worn carpet. I dabbed at the tip of my nose with a small scented handkerchief. Attar of roses from Boots at 4 6 a bottle. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Oh, God. Help me. Help me.
Won't you come in?
He was sitting behind a large mahogany table. Even in the dim light, I could not mistake him. He was so handsome. He didn't get up. He just inclined his head in the brusque, slightly stiff way I knew so well. It was the bow with which he acknowledged applause in the theater.
Dear lady, pray sit down.
Thank you. I sat down. I didn't know what to say. What was there to say? To gain time, I quickly glanced around the room. An ordinary room with flowered wallpaper. There was a bed, a wardrobe, a small chest of drawers. Sprawled grotesquely on a chair to Max's left was the dummy George. So lifeless there in the half-light. Mr. Collodi.
Max Collodi at your service.
Mr. Collodi. My voice sounded thin and false. Not myself speaking at all, but someone else. Someone else in my body. Trembling, aching, sick in the stomach. And suddenly there swept into me as I sat there a terrible and overwhelming desire. I wanted to touch Max Collodi. Just to touch him once. To touch his hands, his forehead, his blue-tinted jaw. It was a craving so terrible I could not resist. I got up. I stood for a moment, staring wildly, hardly breathing. I walked quickly around the table.
Madam, what are you doing?
I touched him on the cheek and... He toppled sideways and fell from his chair.
You crazy woman! What have you done? What have you done?
sitting up on the chair, his hideous face twisted with rage. And as I stared, I realized that the dummy George was a living creature. And that what I had loved was nothing but wood and cloth and glass. At last I had met Max Collodi, the ventriloquist. I stared at the dummy on the floor, the beautiful, staring face I had loved so much. One eye was gone and sawdust poured from his head, but it still smiled. And all the time that misshapen dwarf was weeping. That unlovable thing, the real Max Collodi, who had worked the movements of that handsome mouth with strings and wires. How could he have hoped to get away with it? He who was as hungry for affection as I was. I started to run from the room. My foot trod on something round and hard. I stooped and picked it up, then ran screaming from the hotel. It was the glass eye. The glass eye of the thing on the floor. The glass eye that rests now as a terrible relic on its black velvet pad on my mantelpiece.
Now that is a story. Tell me honestly, did you ever think that the real ventriloquist would turn out to be just a dwarf? And that the big handsome man was really only the dummy? Well, it had me surprised. That's what we call a switch ending, and it's the kind that would have made O. Henry proud indeed. Lurene Tuttle is to be warmly congratulated for her fine acting as Julia, and Byron Kane deserves a bow for his portrayal of Max Collodi, both sizes. Claude Sweeten, as always, composed and conducted the music. Jerome Lawrence and Robert E. Lee wrote and directed this pre-radio adaptation of John Keir Cross's The Glass Eye. Our thanks also to choreographer Jerome Robbins, who chose The Glass Eye as this week's favorite story.
Quiet, please. Quiet, Please, which is written and directed by Willis Cooper, and which features Ernest Chappell. Quiet, Please, for tonight is called 3,000 Words.
What did you do if you heard a knock on your door some cold winter night? You went to the door and opened it. There was a fellow about 3 feet high standing on your front porch in the snow. Jump about 10 feet in the air and yell? Sure, probably. Only Hubert didn't jump. He couldn't. I was as surprised as he was. I saw my brother sitting there in a wheelchair. He saw a dwarf covered with snow looking as if he'd stepped out of a Walt Disney cartoon. And then Virginia come running from the back of the house, and she recognized me right away.
Monk, where'd you come from?
Hiya, Virginia. Hubert, what's with this wheelchair?
What are you doing?
Hold it, Virginia.
Hubert.
Come in, Monk, come in.
Why, thanks, friend. What's with you, Hubert? What's the wheelchair for? You sick?
He's been in that chair 4 years, Monk.
Oh, Hubert, what's the matter? Gee,
I fell off a train platform. I can't use my legs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What do you want, Monk?
Can you? They got your coat, Monk.
Yeah, well, thanks, Hubert. Say, I like this place.
We like it. Well, sit down.
Thanks.
Virginia, go make us a drink.
Swell.
I want
You
to...
heard me, Virginia.
Oh.
Still don't like me, does she?
How'd you find us?
Huh? Oh, I ran across an item in the billboard a couple weeks ago. Says you were in business here. So I was in Cleveland. I thought I'd run up and take a look at you. Only overnight, you know.
What do you want, Monk?
You're sure way out in the bond docks, aren't you?
We like it.
Cost me my last $4 for a taxi out here.
You're broke, huh?
Flat.
I figured that.
How you doing?
We get by.
There's no show business here, is it?
We're not in show business anymore.
Oh.
No.
Not much a guy can do in a wheelchair, is there, Hubert?
No. Not much.
Yeah, it's too bad. For a guy my size, shape, to get an honest day's work. It looks like you're in the same boat now.
I work.
Doing what?
Junior,
What?
hold a drink.
I'm coming. Heaven's sake, I only got 2 hands.
That's what I need. Scotch, huh? You must be doing all right, kid. Well, school. Yeah, good. Yes, sir, you must be doing all right.
You're not going to get a cent, Monk.
Now, look, honey, I'm Hubert's brother, not yours, and he'll decide, not you, so let us not be bitter, see?
Sit down, Virginia, and shut up.
Am I right, Hubert?
I suppose we're stuck with him.
You said it.
Hubert,
Nix, Virginia. I won't be much trouble, Hubert.
Monk, how about doing a little honest work for a change?
Well, a little, maybe. Doing what?
You're talking about how I used to be good with my hands.
Hey, I was better.
That's right. Well, I got a certain amount of work to be done, Monk, and I can't do so well since my accident.
You talking about woodwork?
Yeah. Virginia, give Monk another drink.
I tell you, Hubert.
I said give him another drink.
Said give me another drink, Virginia. A little more scotch and not so much soda this time. Yes, thank you, dear. Go on, Gilbert.
Remember that dummy you made for me in Detroit in Jack Hill's shop?
Yeah, sure. What are you doing, making dummies for the profession?
No, I'm still in the profession.
Well, I thought you said you're out of show business.
I am.
I don't get it. Oh, thanks, Virginia.
Listen, I was the best ventriloquist in show business.
Oh, you were good.
But did show business ever give me a break? Did I ever play the Palace? Did I ever get on the radio? Did I ever make money?
I remember when you got $600 a week.
For 11 weeks.
That's right, Monk.
What are you doing here now? Playing club dates or what?
I never leave the house.
We never leave the house.
Hey, what's the gimmick, Hubert?
If you take up my proposition...
Hubert, you'll be
Shut
sorry.
up.
Thanks.
If you take up my proposition, you're not to leave the house either.
Well, if it pays off, and if we eat, and drink.
We will.
How much?
20 a week and found.
20?
20.
Well,
we eat good, Monk.
Yeah, have another shot, Virginia, please.
You want one, Hubert?
Yeah. Well?
I don't get it yet.
I want you to make me some figures.
Figures? Dummies?
Well, like dummies. Some of them will be kind of portrait figures. It'll be masks and stuff, too. Got a very nice little shop in back.
Look, will you tell a guy what this is all about for the love of... Oh, thanks, Virginia.
Why, it's very simple, Monk. I want you to make some ghosts for me.
Sure, you figured it out, didn't you? It's a new angle on the spiritualism racket. We sat there till 2:30 while he told me about how he worked it. He had a dummy all fixed up in Oriental costume, turban and everything. He'd sit in his wheelchair with a very dim little blue light overhead, and Virginia'd come in and make like she's hypnotizing him. She wore a black robe, a veil, all that kind of stuff. And the suckers would ask questions, the dummy on Hubert's knee would answer. And the suckers would pay my brother perfectly good dough for it and come back for more. Yeah, sure, it sounds corny, but you have no idea what suckers will go for. And this is a big town. Never mind what town. So there's thousands of suckers to draw on. It's pathetic. But how it pays off. Hide around town. With them tomatoes, I can whip up little Josephine to the life. No time at all. And get this. Nobody knows I'm there, see? And the dwarf can move around the darkened room almost as if he's invisible. You look in the wrong place, see? Well, it's a riot at the gold mine. No checks, strictly cash on the line. Hubert stashes it all away in a big old safe. All except what he goes out to Virginia for the house. And my pay. And that ain't so good. What's $20 with the hundreds that came rolling in? What's a few dollars a week for grocery money with hundreds of dollars being stuck away in a little old safe? Virginia?
What are you laughing at, Monk?
I was just thinking. There was this one woman, this Mrs. Kiefer. She was the biggest sucker of them all. She used to come every week, every Thursday, to talk to her dear departed husband, Tom. I got to know Tom pretty well. She'd sit there in the dark blue light and bawl quietly.
Hubert, can't you bring my husband back for me?
It is very, very difficult.
Oh, Tom. Tom.
Be still. Tom wishes to speak to you. Tom. Tom Kiefer. Tom is here.
Oh, Tom. Speak to me.
I love you, Adelaide. I'm very lonely here.
Oh, Tom. If I could only see you.
I may speak to you only through the medium of this figure, Adelaide. Be good, Adelaide. Be good. Be charitable. Give your money to the deserving. For in this mysterious land from whose shore no traveler returns, we know the worthlessness of earthly wealth.
And standing in the other room in my suit of black tights that covered me from head to foot, I whispered to Virginia, he's laying it on thick tonight, ain't he? And before she could reply, I heard my cue.
I must return now and leave this figure through whose lips I speak to you, Adelaide.
Oh, Tom, no. No.
Good night. Be still, Mrs. Kiefer. Perhaps you may feel the hand of the dear departed one upon yours.
And I sneaked in, and I touched her arm ever so lightly. She screamed and jumped. She was looking straight in my direction in the dim light, only she was looking about 2 feet over my head. She didn't see me at all. It's a great racket. A dozen more times like that, and $200 bills, sometimes 3. The other customers with their 20s, their 50s, and a safe in the corner of the room bulging. And 20 a week for me. And house money for Virginia. And me and Virginia and Hubert with the props put away, sitting and having a drink together. And all of us thinking,
I'm thinking about the money. Beautiful money in the safe.
I'm thinking about the money. The beautiful money in the safe.
I'm thinking about the money. The beautiful money in the safe.
Well, I don't know what you two are going to do, but I'm going to bed.
Good night, Hubert.
Good night, Hubert.
I was wondering something, Virginia.
Yeah?
I was wondering how long this goes on.
What goes on?
The $100 bills. You and me on nickels and dimes.
Huh. Forever, I guess.
You want another drink?
I sure do.
Yeah, I'm getting a little tired of it.
You are?
Yep.
That chance of doing anything about it with him.
You know, Bunk's a ventriloquist, too.
What? I thought you were in bed, Hubert.
That was me, Virginia.
What?
Sure, Virginia. I'm a ventriloquist. I'm better than Hubert, even. And he doesn't know it.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Listen.
Sure, you're a ventriloquist, Monk. Monk! Why, I could have sworn that was me speaking. I didn't.
You see, in a pinch, we could get along without Hubert, couldn't we? $100 bills. Hubert happened to leave, I could build a dummy of him. We could just change places. The dummy could sit in the wheelchair and hold a ventriloquist on his lap. I'm about the same size as the dummy he's got. And the Oriental clothes that fit me.
Who'd know the difference?
I can imitate Hubert's voice or anybody's voice. In the dark.
Who'd know the difference?
The dummy could wear Hubert's clothes. It'd have Hubert's voice. But the dummy wouldn't get the money.
We would.
We'd know the difference.
That's right. Nobody knows you're here.
Nobody ever leaves the house.
Nobody'd ever know the difference.
And so, you know, I really wasn't surprised 3 or 4 days later when Virginia came and told me that Hubert had died. Something he ate seemed to be. Virginia had more stuff in her than I thought she had. It's no cinch digging a hole 6 feet deep between supper time and breakfast, especially in the rain. Especially when the people digging the hole are not very used to manual labor, a woman and a 3-foot dwarf. The rain helped, of course, after we got the grave filled. Made it look as if the place had never been dug up. Very neat. Very handy. I was pretty tired by daylight, but there wasn't much time to rest. I had to get the dummy made. Virginia had to sew Hubert's clothes on it. Then we had to go and open the safe with the combination we found in Hubert's desk. Look at the money. I had to look at it pretty often and count it. I kept practicing Hubert's voice, too. I wanted to be perfect. Listen, Virginia.
87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation.
How's that?
Oh, it's giving me the creeps.
Now, cut it out.
Don't do that. Sound exactly like him.
Good.
Now, my dear Adelaide, if you could see your way clear to leave an extra $1,000 or so with our good friend.
That's perfect. You got him exactly.
My baby, I can imitate anybody. Looks all right, though, doesn't it? Turn off the main light. Sure, fine. Let's get the head down a little. Okay, Hubert?
Like this one?
That's it, Hubert. How's that, Virginia?
Uh-huh.
How do I look, okay? Okay, I climb up on the dummy's knee. Put the arm around me, Virginia. That's it. Oh, the hand caught my collar. Take it easy. You don't want to choke me. Oh, can't you fix it? Let go of me, Hubert. Yeah, that's better. Hurry up, Virginia. There's somebody coming up the porch. Easy now. Take it easy. Here we go.
Come in.
Good evening, Hubert.
Good evening, Mrs. Kiefer.
How am I doing, Virginia?
Good evening, Mrs. Kiefer. Hubert says he feels the presence very close. And will you please sit down at once?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. I'm so glad.
Please sit down quietly, Mrs. Kiefer. The spirits are near. Virginia?
I am here, Hubert. Rest and sleep, Hubert, that the spirits may know and come. Rest, the blessed trance of the soul. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.
I'm going to have to make this snappy. That hand's digging into my neck again.
Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.
Adelaide.
Oh, Tom. Tom, darling.
The first time, the second time, the third time. I was terrific. And Tom was under control, too. Tom told Adelaide to give away her money, give to a worthy cause, he said. Well, what cause could be more worthy than the cause of the medium that brought Tom's voice back to her from across the Jordan? Why, sure. The third time, she left $1,000 with us, and Virginia and I spent quite a while that night just sitting and looking at the money in the battered old safe. And not remembering the $20 a week in the piddling grocery money that used to be ours. It was that third night that I woke up sometime after midnight. I couldn't resist the temptation to go in and open the safe. Look at the money again. Feast my eyes on it. Feel its crispness in my hand. And I went into the room, and there was a little tiny light there. But I couldn't see anything for a minute, so I just waited. I just waited and waited. And then I heard a sound. I didn't recognize it at first, but as my eyes got more used to the dimness, I discovered the door of the safe was open. Somebody else couldn't resist temptation. I flipped on the light. Well, my dear Virginia.
I was just looking.
Where's the money?
What? Money?
Ah, stop that silly talk. So you were going to scram with it, leave me holding the bag, huh?
You get away from
Good
me.
thing I couldn't sleep.
Get away.
Too bad, Virginia.
I'll put it back.
No.
What are you...
Too bad, baby.
I'll break your back, you...
I'm so glad I learned to imitate your voice, Virginia.
Let go
Because
of
I
me.
didn't need Hubert, darling. And I don't need you either. In addition to being a very good ventriloquist, I am also very strong. Virginia was a big girl, but she fit in the safe quite nicely with the money. And then there was another hole to dig in the garden and not so much time, so I made it only 4 feet deep. And there I was all alone, me and the money, and nobody knew I was there. They thought Hubert and Virginia were there. And how could anyone know the difference? Mrs. Kiefer is on the way over. She's got a lot of money to give away tonight. I might just as well have it. Don't you agree? Well, dummy, let's make it good. Okay, Hubert?
We'll make it good, brother.
We sure will. And that's all, brother. Now, sit still. Let me get set. Hook the arm into the back of my costume. That's good. Lights are all fixed. Now, when the doorbell rings, Virginia will answer, but Mrs. Kiefer won't see her. Let's see.
Come in, Mrs. Keeper. The spirits are waiting for you.
Not so bad. Darn it, that hand's choking me again. Have to fix that. Awful uncomfortable. My gosh, she's early.
Come in. Come in.
Yeah, I must have been hearing things. Well, let's go look. Something's caught. Mike, what's that? No, it's that hand. Here. I can't reach it. Let go, Hubert. Hubert, let go. I'm choking. I'm choking. Who's that? Hubert. Virginia. Help. Help.
That's our show for tonight. I want to thank you all for listening. And remember, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/terror1970, or you can find me on Instagram at Radio Show Nerd. I also have a YouTube channel, Terror Radio. Please check it out. Like and subscribe and share the videos. It will be highly appreciated. Again, I'm your host, Keith, better known as the Radio Show Nerd, signing off.